You ready?
Yep.
Thank you.
Let me conduct the roll call.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Willis,
Present?
Vice Chair Pease,
Present.
Board Member Bauer,
Present.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich,
Present.
Board Member Henrik,
Present.
Board Member McKinnon,
Present.
thank you, and Board Member Weimer. I see that she's absent. We have a quorum. So now let me quickly just remind people how they can provide public comments in Zoom or if they're in person. During the meeting, members of the public may provide live public comment by submitting a speaker card prior to the start of public comment on that item. Speakers may address items that are not on the agenda during oral communications portion of the meeting. If a public comment speaker wishes to speak on more than one agenda item, please indicate so on their speaker card. Spoken comments via computer will be accepted through Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join. Meeting ID is 968-0 on raise hand. When called, please limit your remarks to the time limit allotted. Spoken public comments using a smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom mobile application. To offer comments using a regular phone, call 669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 968-0019-7512. When you wish to speak on agenda item, hit *9 on your phone so we know that you wish to speak. Chair Willis, that concludes my brief reminder how to provide public comments. And the next item on our agenda is teleconferencing resolution.
Thank you. So can you briefly summarize our resolution so we can vote on it?
Yeah. Yes, you remember we adopt this resolution every month or the first meeting of the first meeting to allow board members to be able to participate remotely and in person. Yeah.
Thank you. And can we do? Okay. Do I have a motion to?
I'll move to we adopt the teleconferencing resolution.
All right, I'll second.
Thank you.
And let me conduct the vote. Board Member Bauer,
Yes.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich,
Yes.
Board Member Hendrick, Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pease,
Yes.
Chair Willis.
Yes.
We have the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. So moving on to oral communications, do we have any this morning?
I haven't received any speaker cards and we do not have any raised hands in Zoom.
Thank you. And do we have any, do we want to discuss our schedule of meetings and assignments?
Amy is preparing to share with us city official report.
Thank you.
Yes, well, it's not difficult. We're at the end of the year, and this is Amy French, Chief Plan Official. So we have today, and we have the end of this month, I believe, is Thanksgiving. I'm not looking at the schedule at the moment.
It is.
So that's canceled. And then we have 2 dates for December, but the second date is December 22nd. So I would say maybe we should consider canceling that one.
Yeah,
but
it's hard to imagine anybody's going to be in the mood for that one.
So, yeah. if that.
So can we cancel it or do we need a vote on canceling it?
Yes, no, we are not required to have 2 meetings. a month.
Okay, so we can
Yeah.
cancel that one.
Yeah.
And then we will rock it in January.
Yes, we'll come back in January. I'm thinking the second meeting in January, we might have more at that point. We'll have a big agenda for the first meeting of December. So we'll touch base before then to.
Sounds great. Moving on. The COVID situation is changing. So we are moving back away from Zoom meetings. Amy has attached our bylaws to discuss in order to sort of frame a discussion for remote attendance in 2023. The Brown Act requirements are definitely a consideration for us. I hope you all read that far into the report. And do we want to talk about that at all? I don't think there's any way around the Brown Act, but we might want to talk about, how many meetings and how we frame our attendance.
Sure, yeah, I'll just say that with the Brown Act, if you're posting your location, making yourself public, say you have a home, we used to do this before COVID. We had a member that would not be able to come in person because they had surgery or some kind of thing, and they would post at their house on their porch that they are attending a meeting, and we would put it on the agenda where they are attending from. And so that is the Brown Act option. But, again, it takes effort. It's not just, I can't come today and I'm showing up on Zoom. So it takes advanced effort.
My impression, there's also a limit to how many times you could do that.
No limit.
Yeah, there is no limit.
No limit on that. Okay,
From my understanding.
thank you.
It's
Careful
just that,
readers.
again, it takes advanced coordination. It can't happen, at 8:30 when we're signing on. It has to be posted and all that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, if we have 24 meetings, I guess if there's no limit, it's not really a big deal. Why did I think there was?
I think the state law does not set limits on that, as long as you're following the Brown Act. But as a board, you are, it's your prerogative to discuss how many times it makes sense for you as a board to,
Okay.
it's a board policy for the board bylaws. Yeah.
So I want to read the sentence that got me confused. So it is a summation of the Brown Act requirements by our legal department, I understand. And the sentence that is setting me back is the exception under AB 2449 may not be used by a member of the board for more than 3 consecutive months or more than 20% of the regular meetings in a calendar year, which is why I was wondering if we wanted to define regular meeting because we have meetings scheduled that we have not actually had. So do we count all 24 of our scheduled meetings, or do we shift to 12 a year? I'm just wondering, and I don't think we have to necessarily do this today, but I think it is something that we have to sort of have. David?
I just had a question. As I read the materials, AB 2449 adds another exception to in-person meetings. And I'm asking this, I guess, of Amy, if that's now part of it suggests that this is now part of the Brown Act or moderation of the Brown Act. Do we need to incorporate that in the bylaws, or can we just assume, because it's a new law, that that's another option for remote meetings?
Yes, I believe when we finalize the bylaws with the city attorney, this is our first meeting in planning department coming to one of our boards. The Utilities Advisory Commission did meet recently and adopted something. So I need to find that, stare at it, and work with the attorney to polish the bylaw statement that we're considering adding that would probably refer to AB 2449. I have it on the screen for those of you who
Thank you.
be noticing that this is the point that, without making your location available to the public, then this stuff kicks in about just cause, emergency, blah, 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 right? But if you are making it your location known and all that, then, we're not restricted to this 20% of meetings, 3 consecutive months, all of that, right?
Thank you for that clarification. It wasn't in our packet.
And again, we are going to be getting training on, I'm going to get training because I haven't at the end of this month. You all will have, all the boards and commissions will have training December 13th to fully grasp all of this and get the procedure.
So Carolyn, if I could make a recommendation, I think the board ought to adopt some statement that says that this page that we're looking at on the screen should be incorporated in some manner into the bylaws, even though that might be redundant. It's the second bullet point that I think makes a significant amount of difference, and that is that, if the location is made available to the public and the city lists it on the agenda, then there would be no limit under state law as to how often a member attends meetings remotely.
Yes, that's a good clarification. Thank you, David. And then if the board, on top of that, wants to have some nuance for the board outside of state law, that's up to the board. As far as, is there a desire to limit the number of remote?
My hesitation in incorporating this into our bylaws would be that this could change. I think this is, we're in a new world here with remote meetings, and I see this as something that, might become more stringent or more relaxed depending on how the world turns. So I can see referencing this section of the Brown Act somehow in our bylaws, but I would be hesitant to actually incorporate the wording into our bylaws.
Well, bylaws change, and that's why we're here today. So anything you put in today, we could next meeting just take out. They're not, bylaws are not intended to be, what's the word?
Stagnant.
No, it's not stagnant. It's like adopted once and never changed. That's a poor way of stating it, but by default, everything we do has to comply with the Brown Act. And since this is part of the Brown Act or an adoption that modifies the Brown Act requirements, we don't really have to do anything. But if we're going to do something to the bylaws, it seems to me we could put this as a bullet point under whatever the appropriate paragraph is. And then if things change, then that paragraph will change or be removed. Or we don't do anything.
I'm happy to, I think it's sufficient to refer to AB 2449. The laws change, but not as fast. Every year, but not more frequently than that, pretty much. So I think referring to AB 2449 is sufficient. And, as long as the board is fine with following state law and no further restriction, that would be fine. Now, if you want to continue the discussion about any further restriction as a board, we can certainly do that and come back with other wording that would be more nuanced than state law.
Well, there are other sections of the bylaws I wouldn't mind, revisiting too. So I kind of would like to come back to this at a later meeting when we can maybe assess our options and see if we do how we want to amend this section, what else we might want to do with our bylaws. And maybe I would suggest that it became an annual thing on a set date. So we kind of knew that, second meeting in January, we reassess our bylaws. Any other thoughts?
I would suggest that we at the same time look at the calendar and the schedule of meetings and eliminate the meetings that are going to occur on or near holidays. And this year, that would have been our May 26th meeting, which was right before Memorial Day. The September 8th meeting, which is right after Labor Day. Obviously, upcoming November 24th meeting, which is Thanksgiving, and it's been there for years. It always somehow conflicts with Thanksgiving. And then the December 22nd meeting, one year we had it on Christmas Eve. So I don't even think those dates ought to be in the calendar as potential meeting dates, because they basically create so much conflict with other things going on.
Good idea. I think that's a good thing to consider. And if anybody else comes up with other things that, kind of relate to our operating agenda, I think that would be really good to talk about at a set meeting near the beginning of the year. And I don't know if it's the first meeting. It seems like maybe the second meeting might be a little more relaxed.
Certainly feedback on the bylaws themselves and other items. I know our city attorney was able to be here at 9:15 today. If there was any questions of our city attorney today about what we're doing. I know, for instance, in the past, there have been reductions in the number of council members from, 9 to 7. And, that could be, for instance, a matter of discussion. How many members are on the HRB? That would require some additional work. And I would want to involve, because that's an ordinance change, actually, not just simply bylaws. So anything in that nature we'd want to get a heads up about that so that we could prepare and have that discussion.
I do think that one of the things Amy mentioned is worth us all considering whether we would function better as a 5-member board than a 7-member board. Sort of mixed here, a lot of new members and a bunch of old. So, definitely different viewpoints, I imagine. But I would like to, not necessarily now, but kind of if we could collect our thoughts about whether we would function better as 5 or 7. I think that would be a good thing to have a discussion about at that January meeting too. So my feeling is we're not going to move on anything today. Alicia, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just have a question kind of about typical schedules, like for other boards and commissions. What's their typical schedule look like? When do they meet?
Sure. Yeah. So the ARB and the HRB are, as far as I know, the only morning meetings. The ARB is a 5-member board, and they meet twice a month on the opposite Thursdays from us, so 1st and 3rd. And so they have a large workload, but they do cancel meetings as well when they don't have, sometimes items will be pushed one way or the other, so that we have, instead of one item every 2 weeks, there's 3 items on 1 week, and then we cancel the meeting so that we reduce the burden on everybody's staff and newspaper noticing and all that. So that's that. Then the Planning and Transportation Commission meets the second and last Wednesday of the month. So oftentimes I'm, because I'm the PTC liaison, so I'm there on that Wednesday, and then the next morning I have the HRB meeting, or sometimes it's the ARB meeting, depending on that month. Let's see. I don't know what the schedule is of the other boards, because I don't have so much involvement with them, but most of the time they're in the evenings. Yeah.
So do we want to put that up for discussion? Our meeting schedule? I mean, when we talk about our meeting schedule, we want to talk about time and time of day? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I would be interested in having that discussion. I don't know.
I think it's worth a discussion. No harm.
Yeah.
I think in the past, I'll just say in the past, I know when I had young children and was dropping them off and had to be sitting here by 8:30, and then trains and traffic and all that, I still have trouble with sometimes. We moved it from 8 to 8:30, which was huge for kid drop off. There may be other interest in, do we want to start at 9 instead of 8:30? Because if you have kid drop off, I know, like, for instance, high schools have pushed off, they're now starting later in the mornings. And so there may be candidates out there interested in being on the board, but they say, oh, 8:30 is just too early. I can't be here that early. So it's worth a consideration and discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for participation for people who might have a conflict during business hours, I think, talking about, whether it's, possible for those folks to become involved, I think is a valuable thing to chat about.
I agree. I also think there's more possibilities for people from the public actually to see the meeting and comment because they're not commuting or working at that time.
So, and then the trick just becomes
Staff.
well,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
and mixing it up with the other commissions. So, most, like I said, most commissions are evenings. So we have utilities, we have policy and services and finance, we have council, we have many other meetings tend to have community meetings or on sometimes Thursday nights. I mean, it's not to say you can't have two going at once, which we've done, in the community room and this room simultaneously, and getting the mid-pen media to cover both. But it's a little more hectic. It can be more hectic to try the evenings, but it's worth a discussion. I agree.
Well, is that a possibility with the Zoom meetings? Can a Zoom meeting set up for the conference room?
Yes, we've had Zoom meetings in the conference room and public hearings in the conference room. Not the conference room, the community meeting room, which is the
Right.
one with that currently has the ARB awards posters.
Can we have a discussion about location too? I mean, can we just throw it all in there together?
Well, I'm sorry. I might be if we're going to actually have 2 meetings a month, maybe one of them could be not in the early morning. Is that it? Would that mitigate a little bit of the overhead effort?
It could possibly be that, again, well, that's definitely a bylaws change, but, and it would just require coordination with the mid-pen media because we record all of our meetings. And for the most part, the people that are attending these staff-wise, managers aren't paid overtime, so we can certainly, our time is our time. And it's just if we have staff, we would have to pay them overtime to come to the meetings. But because we have so few projects, most of the time we don't have staff, and maybe those meetings could be the morning meetings. So
I think that making one meeting in the morning and one in the afternoon or some other time will be confusing and likely to diminish the appeal of any change. I don't really have a preference of any time, although late afternoon meetings are not my best time of day. And the traffic is worse in some respects, but later in the morning would be fine with me. I just think we ought to have one consistent set. And maybe we don't need 24 meetings a year. I mean, we just haven't met that much because there isn't that big a workload. So maybe you could put that into the mix if you're going to do this. Also, I would not be in support of reducing the number of board members from 7 to 5. I think it's difficult enough if you have a divided board. We don't have that very often, but when you have only 4 people on the 7-person board making a decision, and that has happened in my tenure on the board, that isn't a very good signal to the community that the board is agreeing on enough of the issues to I don't know, support a movement. And if it goes to 5, then only 3 people would be doing it. And so what we're doing is making fewer and fewer people potentially responsible for decisions that can have significant impacts on city residents. So I think that the city needs to have a larger number of people. 7 would be, it's what it's always been as long as I've been on the board. And the city needs to have those people and find a way to encourage people to do this. I don't think the city's doing that. And I think that's why they're having trouble finding people to sit on the boards. So making the boards smaller may solve a problem of, filling the boards, but I don't think that's good government, frankly. I see we just lost our council representative, but I'm sure this will all be available to the council. This is my feeling about this.
Thanks, David. I mean, it's good to have, you have a lot of experience with the board. I think it's nice to hear that. My feeling wasn't so much along those lines, but I just felt like 5-member board might sort of strengthen our decisions actually, and make the meetings go a little more quickly. I guess I was just kind of thinking it as a condensation of what we have, but I think you made some good points. It's nice to have people in the community involved, and I am hoping with this inventory update and things going on that we can reach out more to the community and make, the need for Historic Resources Board members known more widely. So thank you.
One option as far as this evening meeting idea is, we could keep the bylaws as they are with, the normal time. The regular meetings are 8:30 on second and fourth Thursdays. But then we could have, for instance, you could cancel the fourth Thursday that a certain month and have a community meeting, like we will be having community meetings on our update. So that could be a special meeting. And as long as we're posting it 72 hours in advance and, publishing that, we can do that outside of the regular meetings. That's an option.
Good. I think I like this discussion. I think it's just good to analyze where you are and, what works best for the board. And as situations change, certainly COVID has changed a lot. I think it's a good time to have that discussion. So I think we can have a really good January meeting. And I think it would be good if we all kind of took a moment or two, a couple of times before then to sort of think about, how things work and how they might work better. So that would be great. So my inclination is not to take any action right now, but does anybody feel differently? David, are we okay waiting?
I'm fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that concludes our regular business, but I would like to get some committee reports. Which I'm sure I wrote down my order here, but Lord knows what I did with it. So the first one is Mills Act, and I don't know that David and Margaret, well, Margaret not being here, but I don't think David is really ready to weigh in on this, but the property that was really pressing in terms of my feeling about the need for a Mills Act is being auctioned off on the 17th. And I don't think that bodes well for it, but I also think it's too quick, too soon for us to really have an impact on it. So, maybe when there are new owners at the beginning of the year, maybe we can approach them and see if there's any possibility that they would work with us to use the Mills Act and implement a Mills Act and request one from council.
Carolyn, as I said in my email to you when we were discussing this, there is no Mills Act in Palo Alto. We don't have a program. And Amy can correct me on this, but I think there's only one Mills Act contract. That's for the Squire House. And I don't know what they would apply to. Amy, you could help with that?
That's correct. We do not have a Mills Act program in Palo Alto. We have one Mills Act property. It's the Squire House. And that was from many, many years back. It was renewed several years back when the owner wanted to remove the requirement to have interior house tours every year. That was a moment at council, and we almost lost that one too. So we have to be clear and careful about how we proceed, because the success of the potential program depends on how we proceed, I think.
So Amy, if somebody wants to apply for a Mills Act benefits. There isn't any application. There's no program, is there?
That's correct. There's no program, there's no application. So
Right.
I think what Chair Willis is referring to is the concept for a pilot program where, there would be a need to go to city council with with this pilot program recommendation and see if the council will accept that and support it. And then there could be the next steps.
There, the work that Margaret and I did in the subcommittee, and Brendan Corey, who was a former board member, did years ago. It's 2018 now, 4 years ago. The bulk of that work was defining what would qualify in a Mills Act contract. The rest of the Mills Act contracts information is really city boilerplate, and I assume that it would be provided by city attorney, and there are some questions that may need to be answered, like how do you verify what was done? But we actually have something we could put forward to the council as a potential Mills Act pilot program, but there's been no interest really in moving that forward, in my experience.
Well, I have some now. So I think that the Lamos property on Cowper is at risk, especially with this auction. I think that council could be highly motivated, especially with it being combined with the number of units that are currently on that property. So I could see this being a really good opportunity to go to council and say, it's time for this pilot, let's try it. There's a lot to be gained, not much to be lost. So I would like to, if there's any, if the new owners have any interest at all, I would really like to see us push it, or encourage it, I guess this word. So it's on the back burner here. Let's see what happens on the 17th. The next report, Christian has talked to some people involved with the train trestle that's also at risk. So he's going to give us a little brief rundown on his conversations.
And give me a moment, I have some images to upload.
Amy, I don't know who's running the cameras, but we have a Chambers box on our Zoom and it has nothing on there. So we only see the full board when, in this particular case, when no one's talking. So I don't know, maybe somebody in the AV thing, if they're listening, can pull that up.
Okay, thank you for letting me know, Board Member Bauer. Let me just quickly double check something, okay? Just a second.
There, yeah, okay. I'm sorry to disrupt this, but yeah, that's much better.
Yeah,
Oh no, it's not there.
Are you seeing a presentation that on the screen?
Yeah, we can see the presentation, but what the person talking is, when you talk, Amy, it goes to you, and then they can't see the rest of the council. I mean, the rest of the board, that's all. The council chair. Go, I'm sorry to interrupt, Christian. Go ahead and do your...
So Caroline asked me to look into this historic bridge. So I tracked down Dan Lieberman. He's the public affairs specialist for Caltrain, but he works for Samtrans. So this is a little complicated because Caltrain is governed by three entities. They're through the Peninsula Joint Powers Board, the PCJPB, which consists of agencies from Santa Clara, San Mateo, and San Francisco. So he's actually their employee, and I think the governance is actually rooted or sits in San Mateo County. So I told them what we were interested in when we'd been reading about how this bridge is ending its service life. They're going to have a program for intensive testing. for the next couple of years for safety reasons, but it looks like they're going to eventually replace it. The design phase for that is not slated to start till 2025. So I asked him to consider the idea that the bridge could be preserved in some way, actually even repurposed. I met some sort of immediate skepticism on that one, because when they take out the bridge and they put in the new one, they're going to keep the train running. So this gets pretty complicated. I asked him to clarify who owns the bridge. In our initial conversation, he wasn't exactly sure, but it turns out that it is Caltrain, and Union Pacific is called a tenant railroad for this section where the bridge is. I also asked him if there are historic documents or archival materials about the bridge, and he did send me 2 pretty massive PDFs that are interesting. They're about documents that are close to 100 years old, but they're primarily engineering and planning documents, so I did not go through them all. I think my next step is to follow up with him on whether there are more materials or whether the team there, whoever manages this document search, is willing to actually find some more materials for us. But beyond that, I'm not really sure what next step we should take. There you go.
Yes, I'm sharing a couple of images from those plans
Yeah.
that you got. I have another couple of slides. So if you want to speak to these slides, you're welcome to.
No.
I just want to remark how beautiful that tall tree is when you can actually see it.
You know, the El Palo Alto, the tree is, I think, #2 on the state landmarks.
Really?
Yeah, the California Register of Historic Places. Yeah.
Well, let's
Oh.
hope it can
Historical
survive a
resources.
new bridge. So.
Well, I actually think that's worth bringing up. Preservation of the tree obviously is important to us emotionally as a community, clinging to our redwood. So maybe we could send that picture then with a nice little message to please take care of it.
I would be happy to pursue this, but if anybody
Oh,
else
your
has any
microphone.
ideas about how
I can't,
sorry,
can't hear you, Kristen.
the lights on.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'm happy to pursue this or continue to pursue it, but if anybody else on the board has any ideas about how to position that or the suggestions Carolyn's making to add value to the idea that the site is special, I would appreciate it.
So a little history, which is recent, when Caltrans proposed the electrification of the right-of-way, they did come before the HRB, and they are fully aware, at least in that hearing, of how important the tree is and that it's a landmark status item. And they made a great deal of spent a lot of time telling us how they were going to protect it. I suspect they'll still do that. The other sad news is when they were originally proposing the high-speed rail run all the way down, all the way up the peninsula from San Jose to San Francisco and widen the right-of-way, that would have jeopardized the Palo Alto train station at University Avenue, which is a historic landmark building. And sadly, they are exempt from CEQA on that, and they can do whatever they want on this right-of-way. It's as I remember that. So the best, I think, the best that we can do here is to try to get them to preserve it and maybe turn it into a pedestrian crossing somewhere adjacent to this. I don't know what else to do, but it's not going to stand up because it's a safety issue and it's way past its expiration time. So this is a really tough one, and anything I think we can do to figure out a solution for them that works to just to preserve it for some other use would probably be the best we're going to do. And I don't know how you do that if they have to run the trains. Boy, that's tough. Maybe Amy, you have a recollection of that hearing and
Yes, well, there's the, ooh, what happened? I'll try again. Okay, that was odd. Yes, the JPB Caltrans, Caltrain prepared an EIR, environmental impact report with, statements of overriding considerations for the impacts up and down the line. So part of the environmental impact report mitigation measures or what have you was to pay a visit to the ARB and the HRB for input on like the color of these stanchions or what have you. I don't remember the name of them, but they're tall things. So that was something that they did for input. But they're a higher agency than Palo Alto, and they can do what they want, especially after an environmental impact report that said, yes, there's an impact, but we have this overriding consideration, which is public transportation. I don't know. So I don't recall what it said about that train station. Sorry, David.
no,
But-
this was farther back. This was several years ago when they were first talking about the high-speed rail coming all the way to San Francisco. That's subsequently, I think, been modified significantly. They wanted 4 tracks to come up the peninsula, and it was gonna wipe out the station. Anyway, they abandoned that for lots of other reasons.
So the
But-
electrification project is the project I'm referring to that had an
Right.
environmental impact report.
Right? Yeah, you're right.
And in that environmental impact report, as all such reports, they have topics of, potential significant impacts, and of course, historic resources were among the chapters for that environmental impact report. And so, all of our resources that are listed on the California Register, such as the El Palo Alto, such as the train station. We have a couple of underpasses that were acknowledged. So that is viewable on JPB Caltrain site. You can look at the EIR and see all of that.
Sure.
So the Joint Powers site, we could look at and then find that EIR from years ago.
Yeah, JPB Caltrain. I don't have the URL at my fingertips.
Could you maybe, David, could you or Amy maybe find that so we could all sort of bring ourselves up to speed since most of us weren't on the board at that point?
I can look at it. It's a public record somewhere. I'm sure it's in Palo Alto's.
Yeah, we do definitely. I mean, I can say, it's on our HRB web pages because we went to the HRB and there's links in, I know, because I wrote the reports, there are links to all of the EIRs and information and all of that back in whatever year that was, which that's I'm going to say it was in January of, okay, I'm having a hard time with the year. COVID took that away from me.
Okay,
2018
my only
maybe.
thought is, all 7 of us can search for it, or somebody can take the lead and find it and send us a link. Because it's great that it's findable. So, Christian,
I'm
sorry.
happy to do it. I can do it.
Can you do it?
It may not
Thank
be
you.
today, but I'll put it on
Yeah.
my things to do.
Yeah, no rush, but I just think I've been lost on that web before, so it would just be nice to have a path. Thank you.
If now,
Yes.
I'm pushing this thing, I don't know, break my finger, that they will be complying with section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act, which I did not look up yet, but that's what they said.
I did. It basically just means they'll
Okay.
read it and, look at what can happen and do whatever they want. It was more just a research project, I think.
Yeah, we had the same problem with the the original Stanford Hospital built in 1960, which is designed by Darrell Stone, who also designed the city hall that you're sitting in right now. And that was a situation where, again, for safety reasons, the hospital could not be upgraded. And so the new hospital had to replace it. At the time, and this was more than 10 years ago, probably, that we were reviewing all the hospital expansion plans. They were talking about tearing down the old hospital, and even though it's a National Register qualified building, there was nothing we really could do because state law had really surpassed us as a board in terms of preserving it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't think they're tearing it down anymore. But why I bring this up is, when you're dealing with a health and safety issue of an historic property or a structure, that health and safety issue will triumph every time, because nobody wants an unsafe building or structure that could cause injury or worse. So
Very true.
that,
We do not want that. But hopefully there is an opportunity, and I don't think it's going to be easy, but hopefully there's an opportunity to use the bridge for pedestrian purposes, or, some other, pedestrian purposes instead of a train. So we would still maintain the look and feel of it without its original function. And maybe it's a fool's errand, but I think it's worth pursuing.
well, I think it's definitely worth pursuing, Carolyn, and there were lots of repurposed structures. So, I mean, the High Line in New York City is a great one.
Yeah.
So that's great if we could do that.
Any other comments on the railroad bridge? So I want to go back and review our minutes before we finish our board reports and comments.
Carolyn, can I'd be happy to I want to report on the President Hotel subcommittee at some point. We don't need to do it now. We can do the minutes and then we can do it afterwards.
Thank you. I would love to hear that. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written on September 22nd, 2022?
I'll make that motion. I will make that motion.
Second.
And any comments or corrections? Nothing? All in favor?
Yeah, let me conduct the vote then. Board Member Bauer,
I abstain.
abstain. Board Member Eggleston Sislevich,
Approve.
Board Member Hendrick,
Approve.
Board Member McKeenan,
Approve.
Vice Chair Pease,
Approve.
Chair Willis.
Approve.
Motion carries 501.
Thank you. David, let's go
Yes.
back. Do you want to talk about the President Hotel?
So the subcommittee, which was consisted of Gogo and me and Margaret, met twice at least out at the site. First time with the planner and the owners and the construction people, looked at the proposed colors, and the subcommittee members found that those colors were too stark and not consistent with other Burge Clark type buildings. So we made some suggestions. Margaret went to some great deal of effort to find other colors using her exquisite skill at colors. And we presented those. We went back out again individually to look at colors just to make sure that our first impression was consistent with our feelings. I think all of us made some color again, suggestions. And in the end, and I am extraordinarily upset about this, the director of planning, without talking to a single one of us, simply said that we, as I understood from an email, that the board had approved those colors at the original meeting, and so he approved the original colors. And the board never approved those colors. What the board approved was the project under the condition that the subcommittee approved the colors. So in this case, Gogo, Margaret, and I spent a lot of time on this, and it was ignored without even the courtesy of a comment before the director did this. I don't see any reason to have subcommittees if that's the way the director is going to perform. And this is a person that hasn't been before the board in a decade, probably, in my memory. My memory is not very good, but I just think this is an inexcusable misbehavior on the part of city staff. And I wanted to register that with the rest of you, because there's no purpose in us being here if our work is going to be overruled inaccurately by the people who are in charge of planning. I'm really unhappy about this. And I think I can't speak for Gogo. I know Margaret was unhappy about it, but I won't speak for her. She can speak for herself. That's my report.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. I think all we can do is move forward. And I think maybe when we do have subcommittees, maybe this means we just need to stay in closer contact with staff about, where we are and how the progress is going and how we understand things. But unfortunate, and really, I know how frustrating it is to just spin your wheels and spend a lot of time trying to make something better and have it be ignored. I'm sorry to hear that.
I need to jump in because this was not something that the director late was involved in. This was the staff and myself having conversations. There was some emails sent out to the subcommittee. There were not responses. There was ample time to respond to these emails. She waited several weeks. I'm communicating with the city planner right now who took care of this. She waited several weeks to hear back and hadn't heard back, and then finally emailed the property owner. There's a lot that goes on as far as, and by the way, her final inspection of this is Monday. Claire is going to go out there on Monday, but there's a lot that goes on as far as, getting feedback. We did get feedback. There was a lot that goes on outside of, the moments that we were there on site looking. And yeah, thanks to Margaret for sending those in. A lot was considered, but the director was not involved in the final decision. So I don't want to have him, thrown
Good
under
to
the
know.
bus.
Yeah, the signer gets to take the responsibility.
And David, if you feel it's important, I'm happy to have a conversation with you and Margaret and Gogo and have a separate conversation about that.
I don't
it's not on the
recall
agenda.
getting a lot of emails on this.
I can't hear you, Gogo.
We sent in our emails and I didn't see any response from the city on them until we had the final conclusion.
There were, and I know emails are hard to track, but maybe we'll take this into it because this is not agendized and it's confusing right now to proceed in this fashion. So I would like to take the opportunity to have a meeting about this. And we'll have the planner, myself, and the three members who were on the subcommittee, so we can have a full explanation and understanding. And it's not, the director was not involved.
So this seems like the emails might have been sent to the board at their city emails, which we don't get unless they're forwarded to us. Can you verify which emails those were sent to?
We will do an investigation as to, dates sent, happy to explore the public record on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we might have just had a communications breakdown.
Amy, I'd like to thank you for correcting that. The email that came back, I think maybe from you, just said the director, and I just assumed that would be the director above your level. It doesn't matter who it was. I guess my frustration with this, and by the way, that we're in board member comments and questions, and so I think this is a legitimate time to talk about it. I don't need to say more than just, I'm disappointed that the one email that came out after we had made very explicit suggestions just said, here's what you said, and without direction. I didn't think that a response to that email was required. I thought we would have a full meeting again with Claire and the owners and look at these suggestions, and it just didn't happen. I know how difficult it is. I know how important it is to move it forward. And the last thing I would want to do as a board member is thwart a project of that importance in the city. But now we're going to look at a building with colors that I think are totally inappropriate. And I just wanted to have the final say. I mean, wanted to have an opportunity to have a final say on what colors got selected.
So thank you for that. And the final say in this meeting is not, reachable to the folks that made the decision. So I offer to have a meeting to fully discuss this so it can be understood, so you don't have quite as bad of a taste in your mouth. I'm happy to do that. I would like to do that. Thank you.
That's fine. And I don't want to prolong it, but we can do that.
Okay, thank you both. Inventory update. Alyssa?
Yeah, so we've been evaluating some options for getting the aspects of the inventory digitized and accessible on the website. We've been talking about potentially reaching out to like the IT department to see what might be feasible. And then also exploring the idea of recruiting some volunteers to help with things like data entry and photography, and potentially a little research as well, and how we might find those folks and what might be possible there.
And I just want to add that our current thinking is it would be great to just, we currently have PDFs of the original inventory, and we're hoping we can coordinate with staff to link them to the list of properties that are on the current inventory, which is already on the web. So hopefully makes a little progress, a little bit at a time. I'm going to let Gogo talk. Well, first I want to thank Gogo for joining, being our liaison with the past board. I think it's really good role, and I'm glad past is open to the thought, and I'm very appreciative that Gogo is willing to take it on.
I attended the past meeting yesterday evening, and it was a great meeting. They're very enthusiastic about historic structures. They have a lot of work that they perform. And one of the things that they have just done or completed is they have written a book on Clerk. And so this book is going to be for sale for $20. And they were talking about the venues where they would be able to sell these. I can pass this around so you all can see what a wonderful job they did. It's primarily Palo Alto. They did not go into the Stanford Clark residences. So.
Thank you. I'm assuming we can all find it at Bell's Books in the near future.
Yes, it will be at Bell's Books.
Any other comments before we adjourn? And seeing none, I will, do I need to vote on adjourning the meeting? Okay, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us.